Here we are again at the TRADER24 studios. With the Fed officials accelerating fears of both a more aggressive hike in benchmark rates to 100 basis points, as well as the coming recession and lowering expectations for decent economic growth, investor uncertainty continues. Investment firms are advocating adding to the already heavy sentiment, and the belief that we haven't seen the worst yet is hovering on the trading floors. Atlanta Fed President Bostic said everything is in play to combat price pressures, and Cleveland Fed President Mester said that the central bank would have to go well beyond the neutral level of interest rates. History continues to be made in the forex market, with the parity of the euro to the US dollar being maintained for the 18th hour, while agricultural and energy commodities are going their own way at the same time as gold and silver are being crushed in the maelstrom of recessionary vice. You're watching the TRADER24 Global Market Overview. Let's take a closer look at the situation. On Wall Street, the New York Stock Exchange Index lost 1.18%, permanently in negative territory, with the last hour accumulating extended losses in the regular session. The last 6 months feature a loss of 17.70%, and the medium-term trend is obviously downward. S&P 500 Dow Jones closed with modest losses, minus 0.30% and minus 0.46%, with the Nasdaq closing unchanged after absorbing the macro news, where the betting in favor of anticipating the news was high. Only two S&P sectors closed positive, technology and consumer discretionary, with energy at minus 1.89% and materials at minus 1.91%, recording the largest losses. The picture was similar in small cap, with the Russell 2000 at minus 1.07%, while the VISC risk index also lost 1.57% to 26.82 points, slightly dampening the depressed sentiment. The main negative protagonists in large cap were Transocean minus 10.74%, Conagra minus 7.25%, and Bed & Bath & Beyond minus 6.89%. In the tech sector, Peloton had a poor performance, minus 6.61%, Moderna minus 6.61%, and Alibaba minus 4.81%, while in the industrial Dow Jones, 11 of the 30 listed companies were positive, with the spotlight falling on Boeing, which recorded plus 2.22% to the rhythm of optimism for recovery of all airlines. In the pre-market now, most listed companies are hovering around unchanged, with the Chicago futures not giving clear direction, with plus or minus 0.2% signs, at least for now. Asia closed with mixed signals. The Hang Seng lost 1.67% to 20,405 points, a new 7-week low on reports of a further slowdown in economic growth in the shadow of the lockdown that decimated industrial production in China. It should be noted that Biden's staff has indicated that he is considering relaxing the U.S. policy on semiconductor exports to China in order to restart trade in this sector. Japan's Nikkei closed plus 0.61% in the 26,810 area, and the Topix closed minus 0.40% at 1,885. The Australian 200 saw losses of 1.50% to 6,550 points, with pressure coming from the mining sector such as BHP, minus 4%, Fortescue at minus 5.20%, and Rio Tinto at minus 4.05%. In Europe, the hitherto distant scenario of Italy's sovereign debt problem seems to have come dangerously close, as Super Mario's statements were not reassuring. As if the financial issue that the European Central Bank has to deal with in an already difficult context of high inflation was not enough, there is also the political vacuum created by the unstable bipolarity, with one pole being a far-right formation clearly opposed to the status quo. European markets had a difficult session, permanently in negative territory. Microeconomics have forced the euro to 20-year lows against the dollar, while inflationary pressures in the eurozone at historic highs have created an explosive mix of hesitancy and uncertainty. For the time being, the major indices are recovering with controlled gains, but the corporate activity is not convincing. The DAX and CAC 40 at plus 0.036 and plus 0.26% respectively at intraday highs, while the 50 and 600 euro stocks at plus 0.32 and plus 0.29% respectively. ASML stock with 2.53% gain, recording the highest gains, followed by those of NL at 1.96% and Volkswagen at plus 1.70%. In the Athenian Stock Exchange, Greece is up 0.42% in the general and the large cap 25 indices, while the banking sector is also in positive territory at plus 0.95%, recovering from yesterday's losses. Banks seem to be the leaders at the moment, but volumes are hopelessly low at the open, which prevents safe conclusions from being drawn. In U.S. Treasuries, investors continued their recent selling spree, driving the 10-year yield to 2.96%, 44 basis points below local highs, with the 30-year yield at 3.11%. The interest rate curve flattened again, with the 2-year hovering around 2.95%, and the 2.27% of the 1-year note is surprising. In Europe, the German bond fell to a yield of 1.07%. The spread of the Greek is estimated at 233 basis points, that of the Treasury at 179 basis points, and the gilt at 94 basis points. In the Forex market for the 80th hour, traders honor the parity of the Euro-USD, enjoying this rare spectacle and making history. The strengthening of the US currency continues in other currencies, with the DX index recording new 20-year highs above 108.6 points. The pound now stands at 1.1810 and the Swiss franc at 1.0160. The yen-dollar exchange rate is also at 24-year high above 138.50 yen. The Canadian dollar saw an October 2020 low against the US dollar at 1.3120 per dollar. In commodities, oil is holding below $100 a barrel, with Biden heading to Saudi Arabia today to discuss increasing global supply to mitigate the problem. Recall that the EIA highlights that production is down 18.7 million barrels per day, a pace we saw only last July, accelerating recessionary fears. The problem of very expensive natural gas remains, with TTF at 176 euros per megawatt hour and Henry Hub at $6.8 per million thermal units. Here, data showed that the U.S. utilities added 58 billion cubic feet of gas to their inventories, higher than the 5-year average increase of 55 billion due to the shutdown of Freeport LNG export plant in Texas. Soybeans lost 8.26% to $16 per bushel, a 6-month low due to the officials and the USDA saying that the climatic conditions reduced seed scaling to 63% from 65%. Silver continues to decline to $18.35 per ounce, now approaching serious medium to long-term supports. And gold saw the $1,700 area, to everyone's surprise, as the precious metal has long been considered a deflationary instrument, so in such a high inflation environment, a rise in the price would have been a one-way street in other times. Finally, in the freight market, the Baltic gained 0.40% to close to 2,010 points, with the Panamax closing negative for the 18th session with a loss of 4.40%, and the Supramax recording a new 5-month low with a loss of 27 points. In terms of financial announcements, this morning China's GDP results for the second quarter of 2022 were released, which was significantly lower than the forecast at the 0.4% level. Later today in the US, we're expecting retail sales data for the month of June, and yesterday's results of the US Producer Price Index for June showed that it stood at 1.1%, up 0.3% from forecasts. In terms of corporate announcements, today we expect financial results from United Health with projected earnings per share of $5.21 and revenue of $79.68 billion, Wells Fargo & Co. with projected earnings per share of $0.8526 and revenue of $17.62 billion, BlackRock with projected earnings per share of $8.55 and revenue of $4.79 billion, Citigroup with projected earnings per share of $1.65 and revenue of $18.35 billion, and US Bank Corp with projecting earnings per share of $1.06 and revenue of $5.92 billion. JP Morgan yesterday reported financial results that were negative and below forecasts, with $2.76 earnings per share and revenue coming in at $30.72 billion, both below forecasts. Crypto investors were particularly enthusiastic about the announcement by Fed Director Christopher Waller, who said he supports a 0.75% rate hike in July, which may rule out a larger increase of 1%. Against the backdrop of this event, the cryptocurrency market has seen a spectacular rise in the last 24 hours in both major cryptocurrencies and altcoins. Bitcoin is now comfortably hovering about the $20,600 level with a 24-hour high of $20,866, which it is trying to reach again. The second largest in capitalization, Ethereum, also featured an 11.2% rise from yesterday, topping $1,200, approaching the previous week's levels, while testing continues for its upcoming merger on a proof-of-stake network. Finally, Uniswap is up a spectacular 21% since yesterday after Robinhood announced on Twitter that its Uni token is now included in the platform's crypto listings. Thank you for joining us today. It was the TRADER24 Daily Global Market Overview. Stay tuned for our next comment on the financial markets.